Hi and welcome to another 10x Leadership video. This week we are going to be talking about one of the key skills about being a leader, which is being able to provide feedback. Lots of people really struggle with providing feedback, both positive and negative, but primarily negative feedback. And what I'm going to do this week is I'm going to help you understand a tool and approach that can give constructive feedback that actually gets results. See you after the break. So this week's video, I'm going to focus on a tool or technique that you can use for providing constructive, effective feedback. And what we're going to be talking about is SBI, and I'll go through the details of what that is in a minute. I'm also going to be touching on another technique that's very, very similar, the SAID model. It's subtly different, but we'll go through the differences between the two and when you might want to use each of them. But let's just get into what SBI stands for. So the S of SBI stands for situation, the B is behaviour, and the I is impact. So the S, that's the specific situation where the behaviour occurred, and really what this needs to be is something that you've personally observed, so that you can provide some personal feedback about it. The B is the actual behaviour that you've observed in that situation, and then the I is the impact that behaviour has had. And as I say, this can be used for both positive or negative feedback. And we've got a couple of examples on a later slide for you to have a look at. So in comparison, the SAID model, that's got some very similar elements. So the S is also for situation, the A is for the action, so what action has been taken, the I again is for impact, and the D is what would you recommend that person does differently or do different, as it says there. Don't particularly like the phrase, but you get the gist. So which of those models is best for providing feedback? Is it SBI or is it SAID? Well, the SBI model focuses on the behaviour rather than the action, and for me, I'm really interested in people understanding their behaviours, because that's usually the thing that hacks people off. The SAID model, as I mentioned earlier, also gives a potential solution, the do different element, and again that's quite a useful element to help the person understand how they can change, what they could be doing differently. And sometimes people struggle with what do you want me to do about it? So there are pros and cons of both. Typically SBI is best for regular feedback and also for reinforcing good behaviour. Having said that, I use SBI for providing what people would consider to be negative feedback, and again I'll talk about the benefits of that shortly. And the SAID model, they say, is best for coaching and development feedback, including corrective actions. And I suppose because it's got the D part, the do differently part, that's the bit where the corrective action comes in. You can, my advice really would be to use SBI and then talk about the do differently element of that. But again, we'll come on to that shortly. So talking about my personal preference is SPI. I've been using it again for years. It's a really simple method. It's simple to remember, and it really works. So I'm just going to talk you through the benefits of the SPI approach as I see it. So the first thing is clarity. For me, it's a very precise tool. It provides feedback about a specific instance, a specific situation. So instead of talking in general terms to somebody and giving them some general feedback, there's real clarity with the SPI approach, because you're talking about a particular instance and you can reference that instance. In fact, that's the process. You do talk about that particular instance. The next bit is about objectivity. Because it's based on what you've observed, it's direct feedback on their behaviours. It's not subjective judgment, it's not hearsay, it's not something that you heard they did. It's something that you've seen them do directly. And again, there's a real power in that when you're providing the feedback. The third element is that it is constructive. It is designed and it does allow you to provide feedback, both positive and negatively. The point of it, even if you're providing negative feedback, you're providing it to help the individual consider their actions and their behaviours and whether they want to do something differently. And the impact part of that helps persuade them that the thing that they were doing, in the situation that you saw, wasn't good and had a negative impact on either you or a colleague. And any sensible person would seriously consider that and think, well, if that's the case, I really don't want to be doing that again. So it is constructive. The next element is that it does help improvement. So it encourages personal and professional growth, and it's designed to help the individual. It's not about criticising them. Lots of people worry about both receiving and also giving feedback because a lot of people see it as criticism. For me, criticism is where there's some malice and trying to put somebody down, usually to increase their own importance. But for me, feedback is about helping another individual, a colleague, to get better, because the better your colleagues, the organisation or company is, the better it is for everyone. And the final element is about effectiveness. And one of the real benefits, I think, of the SPI approach is that because of its objectivity, it does reduce defensiveness. And so I've got a couple of examples I'm going to talk you through using a non-SPI approach and an SPI approach. And it really takes the edge and the criticism out of the process. And it just it allows you to talk objectively to the individual about the problem, so that they can consider doing something about it. And hopefully, as you'll see going through those examples, if it was me on the receiving end, I don't think I'd be defensive with somebody going through the SPI approach with me. In fact, I haven't been, because I encourage it and I talk to my team in the same way. In fact, not only do I talk to my team, I talk to my boss and provide feedback through this approach as well. The second things in terms of effectiveness, there's a real connection then between the understanding of the behaviour and the outcome, so the behaviour and the impact. And again, that's the benefit of talking about a specific example. If you talk in general terms, people go, well, yeah, but when have I done that? Or I don't really understand what you're getting at. If you can refer back to the specific example, it provides people with much more information and a much better understanding of where they were going wrong. And the whole point, as I've mentioned already on this slide, is it helps people to consider changing for the better. So, it helps the recipient to think about what change do they want to make to their behaviours that will make the situation better in the future. So those are the benefits. How do you use it? Well, the first thing to do is make sure you're prepared. So think about your feedback. Think about the situation, the behaviour and the impact, and reflect on that and analyse the situation and make sure you've got a coherent story that you can convey to the recipient. The second item is to be direct but tactful. So again, this isn't about trying to irritate or upset the recipient. It's about trying to help them. So you do need to be direct, otherwise they won't understand what you're talking about, but be tactful, approach it in the right way. Approach it in a way that you would like somebody to provide you with feedback. The third bit is about time and place. So picking somewhere where you can have a proper conversation. I have seen some videos and seen some research recently where there's a suggestion that trying to have a conversation within about 30 minutes of an incident or a situation is the right sort of time frame. But make sure that you're going somewhere discreet, quiet, that you can go and have a proper conversation and the person isn't going to feel under pressure or defensive. The other thing about it is your tone and your body language. So again, just think about how you'd like to get feedback. And if you're doing it in the right way, if you're talking to someone saying, can I just give you some feedback? That's much better than just launching into, you were rubbish or, whatever. So think about your tone, think about your body language, do it in a supportive way. And then the last thing is about following up after you've had the conversation, just to check whether the person's got any questions, whether they've understood your feedback. And as I mentioned before, for me, that would be the bit where you might also talk about the next steps, the do differently piece. I know that's part of the SAID model rather than the SBI, but that'd be quite a good time to do that. So I'm just going to run through a couple of scenarios. So the first one, and I'm going to talk about an SBI and a non-SBI approach. So the first one, we're going to talk about a problem. So there's a team member here who wants to give some feedback to a colleague, and they're going to give it to them in a non-SBI way. And what they're saying is, you're not a team player. Now, I don't know about you, but if somebody said that to me, immediately I'd get defensive. And I wouldn't really be listening to what they say after that, because basically they've come out and attacked me. So, and it's also very vague, isn't it? As we said before with SBI, it's a very precise tool that gives some clarity to individuals. That doesn't really tell you anything. Why have they said that? So instead, let's look at an SBI approach to providing the same sort of feedback, but in a much more effective and productive way. So the SBI approach then would be something like, in our last project meeting, which, as we can see is the situation, you frequently interrupted others when they were speaking. So that's the behaviour that this individual wants to convey to their colleague. And this prevented some good ideas from being heard and disrupted the flow of the discussion. That's the impact. Now, I say on the left-hand side, if I'd been approached and someone just said, you're not a team player, I wouldn't be very happy about it. If somebody spoke to me and said, look, I just want to give you some feedback, and taught me through those three things with a bit more detail, admittedly, they don't have to say, this is the situation, this was the behaviour, this was the impact. They can do if they wish, but it's more of a conversation. If somebody told me the things in those three red boxes there on the right, I think I'd be interested in knowing more and listening to that person and trying to find out, okay, well, what was I doing then? Why, how was that coming across? Can you give me an example of when I did that? And then they can go into a bit more depth. I'd probably be interested as well in thinking about or asking them, what could I do differently next time then? So that was for a problem. Of course, it can be much more significant than that. But again, I think if somebody, in your team accused somebody else of not being a team player, that'd be quite an important and quite a big thing to happen on the team anyway. Scenario 2 is more of a praise approach. So the non-SBI approach, and you might have heard this sort of thing either from your boss or from colleagues to others. They say something like, "Oh, that was a good job, well done." Well, what do you mean? A good job? Which bit? Which bit of it was good? Again, we talked before about the SBI being really precise and providing clarity. The non-SBI approach there doesn't provide that at all, does it? Good job about what? Which bit of the job that I've just done was good? So it's almost somebody just ticking a box and saying, what they think somebody needs to hear. Instead, the SBI approach for a similar sort of situation could be, during the client presentation on Monday, so the situation, you clearly explained the project's progress and addressed all client concerns with confidence, which was the behaviour, and then the impact of that was this impressed the client and reinforced their trust in our team. You can see there's a massive difference between the left-hand side and the right-hand side. And the right-hand side gives you much more detail. It feels much better to be receiving that sort of feedback, even if it was negative feedback, because at least it's precise and you can talk about it and understand where you need to make changes. As I say, I've used this for feedback for people in the team, people I don't really know, my boss, a whole range of people, and I've encouraged people to do the same with me. So just to sum up, I just wanted to cover the benefits again. So the benefits of the SBI approach are clarity, objectivity, it's constructive, it helps people to improve, and it is definitely an effective method. So again, if you want to be a great leader, this is another tool to have in your toolbox and to be using for your team, for your colleagues, for your boss, for people to give feedback to you. I would encourage you to talk to them about this. So this is the method that I recommend, that I use. You might want to go off and have a look at SAID in case you think that chimes more with you, in which case that's fine. As long as you've got a method for providing effective feedback, that's all that matters. As ever, I hope you found this video useful. This particular video would be really, really useful to share with your colleagues and with your team. Not because it helps me, it does, it helps the channel, but because hopefully I've explained it clearly enough that you can share it with anyone and help them understand why providing feedback is important and why providing feedback in this way is much more productive and effective than lots of other methods that are out there. If you did like it, subscribe, please comment, please let me know how you got on, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much.